All right, in this video, we are going to talk about a couple different ways to make a loop tool. And Ceramics 1, guys, you might not be too familiar with this tool simply because we haven't had an opportunity to use it in class. Ceramics 2, guys, I know that you're familiar with this tool in terms of trimming after throwing on the wheel. But in this case, we are likely going to use this for hollowing out pieces. I have an idea for a project that we'll be doing while we're at home that will entail making an object out of solid clay first, and then cleaning out the insides and using the loop tool to make that process a little bit easier. So the first way I would recommend making this tool, if you have these materials, is using a paper clip and the handle of an X-Acto knife. You don't need the blade for it, because what we're going to do is we're going to end up taking this top part off. Okay, so if you unscrew it completely, oops, don't run away from me. Okay, then this part actually comes in two pieces. So if you pull this little textured surface off, kind of that grip part, then you have this piece remaining, okay? And that's the piece that opens up, that allows you to slip the blade in, and then you can tighten it back up with this piece into the handle. However, instead, we're going to use a portion of our paper clip to insert into it. So I'm just going to bend that middle part of my paper clip out, trying to keep it straight, trying not to mess up the curve that I have here. But if you just bend it back and forth a few times, that piece should just snap right off. Now, ideally, we would cut this off. If you have a pair of wire cutters, great. That would be a great tool to snip this off to make it even. If you prefer, you can also use scissors to kind of hold it in place as you wiggle that part off back and forth. It's a little trickier, but there we go, we got it. So it's not perfectly even, but it should still work. Okay, and from there, I'm going to take this part and kind of squeeze those ends together and insert that into this top part of my X-Acto. Okay, might take a little wiggling to get it stuck down in there. Okay, so you should have something that looks like this, and then you can put this piece back on and screw it back together. Now make sure that this is nice and straight when you go to tighten it, because that's how it'll tighten in to the top of the tool. Okay, so give it a good twist, because we don't want this to come loose while you're actually using it. You want it to be nice and solid there at the top. Okay, so this again will help us to kind of reach in and scoop out the inside clay from our solid piece that we're going to be building. Another way to make your loop tool, if you don't have the handle to an X-Acto blade knife, is by using a pen as your handle. So I'm just going to deconstruct this pen. It's just a simple ballpoint pen. Okay, pull that off, push the ink part out, and then pop this part back in. So you've got a nice little enclosed, tighter space up here. And then I'm going to take my piece of paper clip, okay, and I'm going to kind of pinch those ends in a little bit so that they come to a point. But then I'm going to take the very end of it and just sort of bend it outward this way, and then the other side that way. Again, if you don't have a pair of needle nose pliers or something to be able to really grip it with, you can kind of use your scissors to hold on to the ends. Oops, not the right way. Get a little bit of leverage on it and just kind of bend that piece out. Okay, so make sure you do that same thing with the other side. Okay, and you should have something that looks like this. Okay, so then I'm gonna take that and again, kind of squeeze it together and insert both pieces into the pen. Okay, so I can kind of push it down there so it's nice and stuck. Now, one thing that doesn't work so well about this method is it's stuck in that, well, I thought it would stick a little bit more up and down. It'll hold it relatively well, but it'll still allow for this piece to twist around in the tip of the pen. So if you have some glue at your house, Gorilla Glue, super glue, hot glue would be great. Even some Elmer's glue is better than nothing. Put a little bit of that glue in the tip right here, in the tip of that pen after you put this part of the paper clip in, and let it dry, and that'll help to secure it even better and allow you some more ease with this tool when you go to use it. Another thing that I failed to mention in the last video is that if you don't have a paper clip, if you can't find one at your house, but you happen to come across a bobby pin, this will also work. It's already got a little loop on the end, very similar to the paper clip. To make that a little bit bigger, you can kind of bend the legs of this open. Try not to bend it too far. You don't want it to snap. Okay. All right, and then stick something in there like your pen or another round object. And then just kind of bend back around to create a larger opening. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, this isn't to do much more than to scrape out the inside of a solid piece of clay. So something like this would work just as easily as a paper clip too. One final way that you can make your loop tool is by actually tying the loop, be it the paper clip or the bobby pin, to the end of another existing tool. So if you don't have a pen, that's completely fine. Maybe you have an old pencil that you can do this to. I'm gonna use, in this case, the end of my paintbrush in my toolkit. So one end will be my paintbrush, and the other end will be my loop tool. So it'll be a nice dual tool for me to use. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and use my bobby pin for this, and I've cut a fairly long piece of dental floss so that I can wrap it around many times to really get a nice secure hold onto the bobby pin once I finish that up and tie it in place. Okay, so I'm just gonna take my bobby pin, kind of situate it on the end of my brush. Make sure you have a good length of each leg of that bobby pin or paper clip coming down on either side. And then I'm gonna take my floss, find the end of it, leave a good amount kind of hanging off the edge so that when you finish wrapping it around and go to tie it, you're not trying to tie a really tiny piece to another really tiny piece. You've got a length there that you can easily work with. So I'm just gonna slide that under my thumb to hold it in place and then begin to wrap it around, kind of working up and then working back down. When you get to this point, instead of just working back down right away, I would suggest taking the other end of dental floss and kind of feeding it through the loop and pulling that tight. Kind of getting it on one side there. And then going back around and doing that again. So you sort of make a cross or a figure 8. And that holds that dental floss in place so that as you're using this tool, that dental floss doesn't start sliding up and off of the end of your paintbrush. Okay, so pull that tight and then begin your wrapping downward. Then once you get to the end or the bottom, take your floss and just kind of pull it over and hook it under. If you're using a bobby pin, hook it under that little leg and then cross it back over and hook it under that little leg. You can do the same with your paper clip. Even though the legs won't be as long, you won't necessarily need to go down the whole length of this as much as you see here. Okay, so anyway, lock that dental floss in place, and then you can tie both the ends together. And then finally, just to make it a little bit stronger, secure this floss, just go over it with a little bit of glue. Again, can be hot glue, can be Elmer's glue, can be super glue, really anything you've got laying around. So I'm just going to use this little bit of white glue to kind of brush over it, seal it up. Okay, and then just set it aside and let it dry.